Shut up and sit down.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You still have distrust there.
We all come from very different places.
Man, we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
You deserve better.
People have to have the information in front of them.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
There you go. Like, just promote people who are doing something. Volunteer to work with people who you like. And
take an issue that's important to you and do something.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only.
Fight for liberty. This is the cherry on top.
Hello everyone and welcome to Fight for Liberty Live. I'm your host David Fite, and as always here to fire you up about some amazing people in the movement. Did you manage to catch tonight's episode of Legislative Deep Dive? Premiered just a few moments ago. If not, definitely go and check it out when we are done. Tonight we're joined by one of the most recommended guests I've ever had on, a campaign managing king and data wizard. But first, we're going to talk about some sponsors. Blood of Tyrants Wine. You know them, you love them. If you are looking for a nice night in while sipping the blood of your enemies and supporting the destruction of the tyrannical state, look no further than Blood of Tyrants Wine, a nice Cabernet distributed by activists you know and love. BloodofTyrants.wine is the place to go. If you use promo code F4L, you can get $5 off your first order. Again, that's bloodofTyrants.wine, promo code F4L. And also, Streamlabs Ultra. Create high-quality content of your own with Streamlabs Ultra, an all-in-one streaming service that combines most of the needed functionality of OBS, Restream, Shopify, and Canva. Streamlabs Desktop gives you a full open-source broadcasting system with guest cameras and multi-streaming built right in, while their online dashboard helps you create logos, thumbnails, overlays, merch store, website, and so much more with more templates than you'll know how to do with. All of this for just $19 a month or $149 a year, less than Restream or Shopify. So go check out the link below, and if you use that link, you'll get either $9 off your first month or $10 off your first year. So go on, check them out. I'm super excited to welcome them as a new sponsor. But without further ado, joining us today, District Rep for LPIN, Indiana, Town Park Board member, candidate for Town Council, campaign manager for SENIAC for Senate, as well as a couple other things, Danny Lundy. Welcome to the show.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. So I always like to start out the show with kind of a testimonial question to get our feet wet. So I'm curious, when did you first realize you were a libertarian?
Oh, I'm a Gary Johnson libertarian, believe it or not. I really just got super frustrated with the whole, this is the best they have to offer. And, I was actually tracking Gary Johnson when he was still on the Republican side. So this is the first time he ran back in 2012, right? And I was like, man, that guy makes a lot of sense. So, of course, he was cut out of the debates very quickly because he made a lot of sense. And then when he decided to run on the libertarian ticket, I was kind of tracking him and I was like, maybe I am a libertarian. Let me go check that out. I started researching and just sort of like, no, yeah, that's where I'm at. Government is totally in the way, and we need to get them out of the way. And I started off a little bit liberty light, like, well, a lot of less government, maybe not get rid of it all, but of course, as you know, the more you get into the weeds, the more you're like, everything's broken, right? And then you find yourself knee deep in the movement and on your show.
Well, there you go. Would you still classify yourself as a libertarian or an anarchist?
I think still libertarian, and I think they have a lot in common. Mm-hmm. Was it J.R.R. Tolkien, right? Who's like, the older I get, the more my political outlook tends toward anarchy. So yeah. I can understand where he's coming from.
Fair enough. So what was the first campaign that you got to manage?
My own. So I ran for a township board. It was a local race. It's not a very big deal, but our county affiliate was extremely new. We were 2 years old and, had a drum total of like 5 members, you know what I mean? And one of those was my mom. You know what I mean? And
that's impressive. I can't get my mom to show up to a single fucking thing.
Hey, my mom is our event coordinator for the county, and she's what I
Nice.
call our party mom. Everybody needs one. If you have a county affiliate, you absolutely need a county party mom. Mom doesn't necessarily work at the table. She doesn't like talking to people all day and out in the hot. You know, she's kind of older, but she shows up with drinks and snacks and every tabling event. And says, everybody staying hydrated. Do you need anything? You know what I mean? Like, and just she's the roadie that makes us look good, right? And everybody needs that person. There's no small jobs in this party. Everything needs done. So I love my mom for that. But anyway, in 2018, I was running for township board, and mostly because I saw a need, obviously, of some things that needed to happen. We've lacked a lot of transparency, especially on the local level. There's a complete lack of transparency. So I was running on making our local government a little more transparent. And I learned a lot about the process that libertarians play a completely different rule book than the other two parties. Our filing requirements are different. You know, our ballot access requirements are different. When we file our reports is different. We have different reports to fill out. Our county clerk doesn't even know how to do it sometimes, right? I mean, it's insane. But I'm a data analyst, so you know, after the election, I kind of unpacked that and said, what was missing? What did I need? And you know, I kind of ran that up the ladder to the state party, and you know, I'm in the Libertarian Party of Indiana, and they rock. So we were able to take action on some of these things. I'm like, look, we need a handbook or something that explains all this nonsense because I didn't know what forms to fill out and all this stuff, right? So it's basic fundamentals. You know, I had a basketball coach says if you can't do the fundamentals, you'll never make the big play.
Right.
And so, you know, the LPIN kicked it into gear. Over the next couple of years, they developed the candidate handbook that we now have for our candidates to show them how to build a campaign plan, how to run, what forms to fill out, all the things, right? So, I mean, and then the number one thing that I noticed as a candidate was I had no support. I didn't have a built-in support system. I had to go book these events myself. I had to get a tent. I had to go set up the tables. That's a lot of work. You know, and a candidate's supposed to only have two jobs. That's talk to people and ask for money, and that's it, right? And somebody else should be handling all the other things. And so that's what set me on the path of I need to build a strong county affiliate because without a strong affiliate at your back, it's really hard to run a great campaign.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, that's why we built the Morgan County Party the way we did is to make sure when we have candidates here, they have a built-in support system. They can just go out and talk to people and ask for money. That's all they have to do, right? So
that's awesome. Yeah, I also, my first experience anything above just base level volunteer was also for my own campaign, and it was rough. I spent the majority of my time and energy just trying to figure out like filings and forms and everything else like that, and
right, if you're wasting half your time researching what the filing requirements are, you're not researching your policies. You're not researching the voters you should be talking to. You're not doing the things you need to do to win your race. You're doing the things you need to do just to not get, you know, fined by the government, right? Which is, they built it that way on purpose. But it's our job as affiliates and the infrastructure behind the candidates to make that easy for you and go, hey, here's the forms you need to fill out. These are the trick questions. Here's how you answer them, right? Like,
yeah. So this is an interesting question now, having said that we both managed our own campaigns. But I feel like a lot of people don't really understand what a manager does and why a candidate shouldn't just manage themselves. So for those watching, can you give a breakdown of really what the job description is?
We don't have much time do we have. So I got kind of an anecdote that I thought of before the show. And I think, you know, me and James had talked about this a little bit ahead of time, too, because I remember him joking that it's really weird that you're hiring your own boss as a candidate, right? Because a candidate's job is literally talk to people and ask for money. And you're in the ring, right? Like a boxer, you're in the ring. And so you don't notice that your left is dropping. You don't notice that the other guy is leaving his ribs open. That's your campaign manager's job when you take a break between rounds to tell you those things, right? But as a candidate, you're the product. You're the product that's getting sold. And so when you hire a campaign manager, you're hiring the CEO of the company that's going to sell you as the product, which is super weird because that person then becomes your boss, but you have to hire them, right? And the CEO manages everything, right? They hire the marketing people, they hire, the finance people, they hire, they fire, they do all the things, they do all the research, they do the market research. It's their job to be informed on where the money should go, where we should be focusing our efforts, things like that, so that you can be the candidate. And having been the candidate, it's hard to be on all the time. You can go to the grocery store, somebody can stop you in the aisle, and you have to go into campaign mode like that. Oh, yeah. And it is exhausting, right? So when you hire a campaign manager, you need to trust them a lot, but you definitely need one. I don't even care if it's a small race. When I was working on James's campaign last year, I was also helping manage Kristen Alexander's campaign here in Morgan County. She was running for a township board race. And doesn't matter that that's maybe one of the smallest, races you can run in the state. You need someone to help you, because when you get, and you were a candidate too, I'm sure you know, some days you're in that ring all day long and you come out bloody and shaken and you've had a rough day. Yeah. And you need a campaign manager to rub your shoulders, wipe the blood off, and say, okay, you're going to go back to the next round is tomorrow, and you got this, right? And you need somebody to high five for your successes too, and tell you what you did right and how you can make it even better next time. Yeah. You need somebody to do all those things. And like you said, you waste half of your time looking up the requirements on this, that, or the other. You have a campaign manager, they're handling that for you. Yeah. You can focus on your message, on your race, on how to make your community better, because that's really what this is about. Whenever you run for any office, what can you do to make your community better, right? And you can stay focused. You keep your eye on the ball. Mm-hmm. Let the coach do his job, right?
Yeah, I was unfortunately like candidate, campaign manager, and treasurer, so that was just I feel like I was treasurer more than I was anything else by the end of it. And
that first race was really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will never ever go back and make that same mistake again, and try to do all the things, and also not gonna just run a half-assed race like that again. I think that was a mistake. I was campaigning a couple hours a day, and I think I raised $110 total for the entire race between 3 donors. That was only 3 donors, 2 50s and a 10. That's it. But
not bad for your first race, especially if it was a small one. That's more than some libertarians raise. Sadly, we should all aspire to raise all the money, though. And I know that feels weird asking for money, but what you have to remember is you're not asking for money for yourself. It's not for you. It's because they believe in the things you believe in, that you want to make your community a better place, and they like your ideas to make the community a better place. Mm-hmm. That's what they're investing in. It's not you. Yep. I'm a gamer, like a dice, Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder kind of gamer, right? Nice. Yeah. And I love to tell people, like, and not to say that you're being fake, but a lot of times when you're in candidate mode, you are playing a character. Mm-hmm. And part of that character's job is to raise money. Right? And if it helps you to disassociate a little bit and say, like, hey, we're raising money, I need more yard signs, we've run out, which is a great problem to have. Go to LundyForMooresville.com and give me another $50, I can buy some more signs, right? Mm-hmm. And it feels weird as a human, as a person, but if you think of, like, I'm asking for, raise money for Kristen, for example, she was my candidate last year, or I raised money for James, if you see the campaign as kind of like, I guess, that third-party entity, and it's not necessarily you yourself, it gets a little easier. Mm-hmm. More important to me is asking people for their time. It's easy to cut me a check for $50. Yeah. It's hard to come out and knock doors with me for 3 hours, right? And so, in my mind, and maybe that's just because I live a busy lifestyle, and I raised 4 kids, and mm-hmm. I had my time was very valuable to me, right? Yeah. So in a lot of ways, I think time is a bigger investment than the money, right? Yeah. So yeah, please, if you want to volunteer for me, come down and knock doors, and I will be even more humble that you came down to help me out, right?
So if someone's listening so far and they're thinking, this sounds like fun, I wanna be the kind of behind the scenes person, but not sure if I'm cut out for it. What are some of the key skill sets in your mind that are required for a good campaign manager?
you have to be able to get things done. The campaign manager's job is not always a fun one. It's hard. When your candidate has a hard day, so do you. If your candidate has a good day, you can still have a bad one. And that's your job. Your job is to let your candidate enjoy that success while you're over here putting out this fire that, some donors upset over some nonsense or whatever. You field those calls because the candidate needs to be positive and on topic at all times. Right? They got to talk to people, they got to ask for money, and they got to be in the right mindset to do those things. Yeah. And so, as the campaign manager, you really are the CEO. It's your job to find talent, to find people who can get things done. We were super fortunate on James's team. We had Andrew Smith on the media side, who was great at putting together press releases, getting them out, turning that around. He's really good at the writing. We had Kenneth Fitzlaff working on social media. And just, he was bing, bang, boom. You get those trains running on time all the time. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to worry about it. We had Zachary Lorenzini on the finance side, making sure all these FEC filings, which is even worse when you're dealing with the Fed. He's handling all that for me. So that was off my plate. We had Eric Allen was our field guy, and he would go out with James and carry the boxes and drive him all over the place and put, a few thousand miles on his car every time that he could take James someplace, just to make sure James had a guy with him, a body guy, to make sure his tie is straight, and his hair is not, messed up. And you don't think about those things as a candidate. You're thinking about, oh man, I got to get up here and answer questions for an hour, and you're nervous, and you're not worried about, is my tie on straight? Is my shirt coming untucked? And it just helps to have someone there, right? Like,
because if you are worried about, is my tie on straight, you're not gonna do well. Like, you're not thinking about what you're talking about if you're worried about, like, oh, do I look good? Because I have almost the opposite problem. Like, I anxious and self-aware about that kind of stuff a lot. I worked in like retail and fashion for a while, so like my what I looked like was I was selling a suit, like, and a tie, like a pocket square. I had to be able to, the pocket square had to look good enough on my suit for me to make somebody buy a $75 pocket square along with their $2,000 suit. So like, that's always in the back of my head. And if I don't have somebody that I know will call me out on something, like when I'm single and I'm just like completely by myself and have like no one to hold me accountable, I'm stressed about that constantly. And I suck at talking to people. I have no game at the bar. Like, it's awful because I'm just worried about like, oh, I sat down. Did my shirt come untucked?
Right. I mean, you know what? As a candidate, you don't need to think about those things. You need to talk to people and ask for money.
Yeah.
So when you've got 10, 15, 20 minutes before that event where you're going to go up and talk to people, you need to be worried about what you're going to say, because that is your job. You are the product, right? And having that wingman or the wing person with you to be like, hey, let me straighten your stuff, fix your hair, tuck in your shirt. Great. Yeah, you look good. You're good to go. Give you the hype pep talk before you go on. Get you all jazzed up and juiced up, right? Those things are important, and you can't do this stuff on your own.
No.
Right? You just can't. You need a team of people around you, even if it's a small local race and you have 2 or 3 people, that's fine. If you're running like a James campaign, you need everybody that will volunteer their time. Like, there's no limit to how many people you're going to need. You need them all, right? And everybody has what they're good at, and you should put them, put the round pegs in the round holes and just let them go. Right? Don't try to take a guy who's really good at social media and be like, all right, cool, you're going to edit videos for us, or run a podcast, even though you're really good at posting things on the Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Or tweeting, right? Make sure people are playing to their strengths, because that helps them and it helps you. And that's the campaign manager's job, right? To find people and go, okay, you fit here and you're really good at it, and go. And when they have a problem or something's going wrong, they call you. They don't call the candidate, because the candidate's thinking about what they're about to say at their next event, right? Or writing up a policy thing to put on the website and do a press release on, and all those. That's their job, and they need to do their job, and we need to do ours. So as campaign manager, a lot of it is leadership, but it's not coddling either. You're not there to be like, okay, now everybody calm down. I mean, if you're just here to stir up trouble, we may not have time for you. And as campaign manager, sometimes you got to be that guy and just be like, sorry, don't be mad at James, be mad at me, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm going to give you this, here, go sweep the floor, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to kick you out because everything needs to be done, but here's something for you to do.
there are so many tasks on a campaign that are unfuck-upable. That you know, like even if they barely do it, even if they're super unreliable, and they put 10 minutes towards filling in this spreadsheet, that spreadsheet's got 7 more data points in it that it had, and the person who's actually building this spreadsheet has a little bit less work to do. Like, you know, at the end of the day, there are so many places that you can like put a person where they don't have to talk to people on behalf of the campaign. They don't have to talk to anyone high up in the campaign. You can put them like 3 steps below.
Stuff some envelopes. That needs done too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but I'm warning people. Don't think being a campaign manager is all glorious and a lot of fun, and I'm going to be the guy behind the throne. You are that guy also. And you do get to run your victory laps from time to time when something really goes right. And high fives all around, buy the team pizza. You know, you get to do those things, and those things are important, and show the appreciation and highlight when people do a great job. Those are the awesome moments.
Mm-hmm.
But your job as campaign manager is a lot of it, and hopefully not a lot if you build the right team, but it is also to handle some of the uglier sides of things so your candidate doesn't get depressed, decharged, right? Because they've got to have that charge and that energy. And when things aren't necessarily going right, even if it's just a hiccup, because sometimes things seem really, really bad, and then, okay, it's a freak out moment, and you just handle it, and within 24 hours, you know, it's handled, it's done, everybody's fine, we got it taken care of. And preferably your candidate doesn't even know that it happened.
Yeah.
Right? Because the last thing you need is, like you said, they're getting ready to go on stage, they're getting ready to go give a speech or something. Oh, man, you know, what are we going to do about this? You know, Facebook message that said they're going to take down my Facebook page or whatever, right? You know, just some nonsense that came over the email or some notice that you got. It just needs to be handled.
Mm-hmm.
But that is stress the candidate does not need. And as campaign manager, it's your job to handle all the headaches all the time. Mm-hmm. All of them are your job. And it's your job to make sure the team has the tools they need. Like if they have a pain point, if they have a headache, and you need to step in and say, hey, let me jump onto this and put out that fire for you so you can get back to work. That's your job, right?
Yeah.
You are the CEO, and that's usually what a CEO does, right? They sit back and hire the people to do the things, let them go, and then when fires crop up, you run over with a fire extinguisher, scream with everybody else, put out the fire, you know, try to clean it up as best you can, and go, okay, you have what you need to get back to work, right?
Yeah, I always love the phrasing of like putting out fires and like the analogy of like a fireman as that job title, because that personally is my favorite part of the job. I've never been an actual campaign manager, but I've done deputy a couple of times over. And on the last campaign I did that with was New York City mayoral campaign, and the way it was structured.
Wow, that's a big one.
It was fun, but basically the campaign manager, the candidate, who I won't name, was such a handful that the campaign manager's job was just handling the candidate.
Just manage the candidate.
Just managing the candidate.
And you know what, that can happen sometimes.
And me and another deputy campaign manager basically split the actual running of the campaign itself. And so, you know, we were the ones working with all of our, you know, directors and setting things up and doing all that stuff. And so he was more of the making sure all of the things that are supposed to happen. And I was the person that handled when things didn't happen that were supposed to happen.
Right. You were the fixer. Oh man, that's cool. You got to roll in like the wolf, right? From Pulp Fiction.
It was so much fun for that to be basically the entirety of my job title. I was either networking and you know, helping our volunteer coordinator get people, or I was putting out a fire of some sort, and that was it. And I could like be confident that the campaign manager was handling the candidate and that the candidate was doing what they were supposed to do, and that everything else in the campaign, all the nitty-gritty bullshit that I couldn't keep track of in my ADHD head, the other deputy was making sure, you know, all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. that setup was fantastic. But yeah, I've always kind of enjoyed that part of the job title with the just kind of running around like a crazy person with a fire extinguisher.
Oh yeah.
If you're good at it.
And you bring up a great point. You know, you were talking about skill sets. One of the really, really important skills is problem solver. You have to be able to solve problems as they come at you. Because there's no handbook that says if this, then that.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen on any given day. Mm-hmm. You know, I would get up, get my coffee, and sit down and just be like, oh, it's going to be that kind of day, right? Yeah. And you just never know what's going to pop up, and you just have to respond, and you have to handle it.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell a fun story from that campaign. I wasn't the one with the candidate at the time. It was actually our events coordinator that was with her. But they were out petitioning, in person. They're actually doing the like primary petitioning. So they were getting registered libertarians signatures.
Right. Okay.
The one and only year we ever got to do that, before we lost party status again. But maybe 20 minutes in, she spills coffee on herself, like wearing like a white, like button up.
Oh, the worst, right?
Coffee down the shirt. Stop at like a TJ Maxx or something like that to get a new shirt. And, events coordinator actually hops on a phone call with me and a couple other people, and we're planning some other stuff and doing some stuff. She comes out of TJ Maxx in a Jimi Hendrix Experience t-shirt. Nice. Like, all right, I'm ready to go. And we're like, all right, we're gonna spin this.
You already know these people are libertarians, right? They were registered libertarians, so you might be all right.
Yeah, hopefully. Man. And they went out and continued petitioning and got some signatures, but it was stuff like that. You'll have to wonder what's gonna happen tomorrow, but you really just can't. Actually, you can't spend time wondering.
You might think, oh well, I don't hope that's okay, and then the next day it could have been front page news somehow, right?
Yeah. That would have been awesome.
She's on somebody's doorbell, right? Like, oh, it's this vagrant, blah blah blah, stole my package, or something, right? You're like, that is not what happened. How do we fix this, right? Like,
oh my gosh, man, handling news. The experience I have the most with the media was working on Tulsi Gabbard's campaign. That one was super fun. Just like waking up in the morning being like, oh, here's a new hit piece from the Wall Street Journal that I'm going to have to answer for at every single door I knock on today.
Yep.
And then I ended up being the volunteer coordinator whose job it was to tell everybody, like, hey, here's how you handle when they talk about this.
Today's topic is brought to you by the Letterkenny.
And libertarian, she's probably like the most libertarian-esque candidate from a major party, and I don't say that because of her like ideals or beliefs or anything. I just mean that her campaign was such a shit show that it felt like a libertarian campaign, and the media hated her enough. And the only difference was the staff actually got along. It was weird.
So chaos works if everybody's getting along. And we felt that on James's campaign, for example. We all worked pretty well together, but it was total chaos pretty much all the time. But to your point, that's one of the things James really sought to do with his campaign, and he made that really clear up front, that he wanted to run a very professional campaign on the back end. He wanted to train people, we wanted to bring in people with some experience, but then by the end of the campaign, like, they know how to be the media guy for the next candidate. That they know how to be the field guy for the next candidate. They know how to be the social media person for the next candidate, right? Mm-hmm. So we really wanted to train things up and show down ballot candidates kind of an example of like, this is how your team should run. And so that was super important to James, that he personally go out and do a lot of work. And he did. I don't think I've seen any other candidate in Indiana, at least while I've been involved, do as much, like go to an event like every weekend. He was hitting at least 2 events, if not 4 or 5. I mean, it was insane. He would, we would plot it out too. I'm going to hit this county in the morning. I'm going to, then I'll grab lunch on the way to this one, and then I'll grab dinner after that and go to this thing at the night, and just like he wanted to run a very professional and active campaign. And, we had the social media behind it. We tried to get out press releases on everything all the time. Obviously, the news doesn't always pick us up, but if you send them 100 and they print one, that's one we didn't have before, right? So we did a lot of things like that, and it was just making sure that we kind of build up that bench in Indiana so that we have the talent we need for the next Rainwater, who, by the way, is running again next year. So, right, when we have lightning hit the bottle like it did for Don Rainwater for us a couple of years ago, we have people ready and prepared to back him up. We don't want to be chaos anymore, like you were talking about, because you're right, that's what happens a lot. And we want to make sure that we're starting to get the training and the experience, and like I said, build the bench is a lot of what we talk about here right now, is making sure people are working on something so that they're ready to step up to the next one. If you're working on my campaign, which is a little town council race, and it's not very, very demanding, you'll get the knowledge and skills you need to go work on, a state house rep, campaign next, or next U.S. Senate campaign, or Don's campaign next year, or Andy Horning, who's going to run for Senate next, I think. We'll see, if we have a contested convention, but I know those two guys have announced for next year right now. So
nice. So let me ask you, this might have just happened. I don't know if you're involved in either of those campaigns, but candidate you really, really love reaches out to you. They say, hey, I want you to run my campaign. I'm running for governor in 28. Who I don't have anyone else on the staff. Who's the first, not person, but position that you try to fill?
Campaign manager?
Well,
no, I try to find somebody else to do the job. Funny story though, James asked me like 10 times before I signed on to his campaign, and I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not doing that. But I'll be honest with you, we sat down, we talked about the fact that he wanted to run as professional a campaign as we could manage with the resources we have, right? And I made a lot of calls, as I thought of people, I'm like, hey, would you do this? Hey, would you do that? And I think the media guy, Andrew, was one of the first people I reached out to because I knew we were going to need a media guy for a Senate campaign. And, he does a lot of sports casting and stuff like that, so I knew he had contacts and some stuff, and I was really grateful when he said yes. Kenny Fitzlaff was another person I reached out to kind of right away. We originally had a really awesome events coordinator who had to step down, and, who life happened, whatever, and I was really upset about that. So replacing them was super hard. And then I reached out to Stephanie Dosbach for that. And she told me no. She had to run Jeff Moore's campaign. So she was being Jeff's campaign manager. And then me and Stephanie worked together a lot. And here in Indiana, we did coordinate those campaigns as much as we could. I talked about James event hopping a lot. A lot of times we would carpool with Jeff to save money. So, one weekend it would be Jeff's team going down. One weekend it'd be James's team picking up Jeff and go, right? Like, so we kind of switched hits sometimes. Who's driving this weekend, right? Because it was a lot of driving, and we put Jeff and James through the paces, man. We put them to work. Yeah. And we made sure they were in front of people so they could talk to people and ask for money, right? Like those are their jobs. Yeah. And you can't do that if they're not in front of people. So that was our job, was to get them in front of as many people as we could to get their message out.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I find kind of mind-boggling a lot of times with a newer candidate is they set the bar too high with like what they want to go to and do, and it's like can we get into this event or that event, and like is this worth our time, so on and so forth. It's like Friday night at the major park downtown where everyone's wandering around getting ice cream and hitting up the food trucks is a worthy event of your time, let alone if there's live music or something. If there's a stage, you have to be there. Like, it's especially if you're talking a small enough campaign where you can hit all of those. If you're doing like a county-wide or a U.S. Congress or state house or something like that, where you can really hit your entire constituency all the time. Like if they're putting up a stage with a microphone and a sound system, you need to be there talking to people and asking for money.
Right. And you're right. I mean, there was a lot of discussions on that early on. Like, let's do this event. Let's do this event. And my experience in 2018 running my own campaign came back, right? And I'm like, stop. Let's reach out because we have a lot of great county affiliates, the strong county affiliates in Indiana. And I was like, let's reach out to the county chairs first. Find out what they're doing because they know what events are best in their county. They know I need a table at this event because that's where the most people are going to be, right? And they're paying for that booth space. They're staffing that booth space, right? Let's find out what they're doing and show up and support. And then that was the second biggest thing for James was supporting down ballot candidates.
Yes.
If the local county affiliate has an event there, those local candidates are going to be there. And so then the U.S. Senate candidate, hey, we're going to be there, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that draws a crowd to also talk to the guy running for county commissioner, the guy, the person running for town council, right? The person running for township board. Try to bring as many people to that booth as we can. Let them do the work so that you can just be the candidate. And so we spent a lot of time just plotting what events do we have to choose from. Like once we started getting the feedback from counties and making sure that communication was open, which did take a minute to get in contact with everybody and say, hey, please tell us when you're having an event. We can't guarantee we'll be there, but I want it on the calendar as soon as possible. And once we started getting that influx of events from our county affiliates, that, hey, we have a booth here and we have a booth here and we're doing this big, the Strawberry Festival and we're doing, the Biker Festival and we're doing, the county fair and all these things, we're able to sit down as a campaign and, like I said, even coordinating with Jeff's campaign to say, okay, these counties look like they have some really great events this weekend. Which ones do we want to hit? And we're planning 2, 3, 4 weeks out in advance so that we can promote that we're going to be there too, right? So that made the job a lot easier. Instead of us trying to like cherry pick, well, let's go see how much the booth is and booking it and blah. I talked about my mom being our event director and being that roadie. Let your affiliates do that, whether it's the state affiliate, county affiliate, whatever. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't double their workload. Go support their work. They love it when, as a county affiliate, when your Senate candidate comes down on Saturday, and that's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday event, I'm telling everybody on Thursday, Friday, come back on Saturday and meet James Seniak. He's running for U.S. Senate. You can come talk to the senator. I guarantee you Todd Young's not going to be here this weekend. Right? Come talk to James. And they would come back and meet James Seniak, shake his hand, even if they disagree with him, even if he doesn't get their vote. They were like, at least I talked to that guy. That guy was out here talking to me, and that makes a really good impression on libertarians as a whole, because we're ready to go out and engage people, where the old parties, in most cases, have given up on talking to them. They don't really care what the peasants have to say.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think we have this stereotype as like even more keyboard warrior-esque than most other pieces of the political spectrum. And so just to see our party out doing something breaks that down in people's mind from the beginning. Because I know even when you have like a really solid candidate like a James or like a Larry Sharp or even, let's say, Gary Johnson, previous elected experience and everything else, when they see the L, they think inexperienced, they think not really in it to win it, they think just gonna like tweet about a bunch of stuff and hope for the best. And to see somebody like out actually hitting the pavement and in a suit with their hair done nicely, speaking professionally, not a weirdo, it instantly breaks down that barrier for, like you're saying, not only that candidate, but the entire slate. It opens that option for them.
You're building a brand, right? And I know some candidates get upset about when we talk about fix your hair, put on a tie, right? Like, well, I'm libertarian, that's not who I am, whatever. And I think the analogy I made to James, because I don't know if James told this story when he was on your show, but there was a big to-do before the state convention about his hair.
Mm-hmm.
He had very long hair, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he was really upset about it, that people kept telling him, well, are you going to cut your hair? He's like, why is that the number one question? I was like, because you're going to be on TV. And you're not just representing you at that point. You're representing the entire libertarian brand in the state of Indiana, right? And he's like, well, it shouldn't matter, you know, blah, 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 the content of what I'm saying. And I said, listen, you can have the best running car in the world, but if it's got garbage in the seats and dirt all over it, nobody's going to stop to turn the key to see how it runs. And I think finally got through, but I mean, that's the truth. When we do our tabling events in Morgan County, the number one thing I tell people when you go out door knocking, anything, your job is not to convince people. Your job is not to change their mind. Your job is not to argue with people and prove that you're right. Your job is to make a good first impression. And for most of these folks, it's the first time they've ever met a libertarian.
Yep.
And what you want to leave them with is a positive experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you leave them with a positive experience, then next year they'll come back and ask you that hard question.
Yeah.
Because right now they just don't want to fight with you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because everybody especially these days, everybody is so burnt out on talking about politics at all.
Yeah.
Like if I say anything, I'm just going to get yelled at. And so if you can respectfully disagree with somebody at a table and say like, well, you know, I mean, that's the libertarians believe this, but it's okay that you believe that, even if you're offended or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Your job is to make a good first impression in customer service above all else.
Yeah.
So leave them with that good impression, and then they might come back later. And I've seen this happen in a single day. I have a conversation with a guy, and I said, well, libertarians believe differently, and we're just going to disagree on that topic, and that's fine. And he kind of got grumbled and stomped off, but, you know, I didn't say anything to offend the guy. He comes back an hour later. He's like, well, tell me why you believe what you believe. And I'm like, well, since you asked. And then I would explain our position, and he's like, and he stormed off. And he came back like an hour later. And he's like, all right, so I thought about what you said, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, I don't think it's right. But let me ask you about this other thing now. Like, his curiosity was genuinely piqued, and I wasn't fighting with him, and you could tell he was ready for a fight.
Yeah.
But I mean, those are the that's how you build that rapport and build your brand.
Mm-hmm.
You really we have to start thinking in terms of branding.
Yeah.
It's not just about this one race. It's, you know, in Morgan County and all our other county affiliates and the LPI in general, you probably see a lot of things about, you know, when we put things out, it's kind of on brand. Because we're trying to build that brand of who the Libertarian Party is in your county. It may be different from the county next to you. It may be different from the national party. It may be different from your state party. But it's what works for you in your county and your demographic.
Yeah.
People are different everywhere. You know, what I care about in Morgan County, you know, like I said, I ran on transparency, blah, 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 blah. There's other counties where everything's on TV, like all their meetings and everything. So that's not something they can care about as much, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they have a completely different issue and a completely different goal, and that's fine. As long as they know what that goal is and they're building a brand to get it to.
Yeah. That story brings up a really interesting thing that I've noticed lately, that like, you know, a lot of things, not just politics, but, you know, religion, sexuality, like a whole lot of things have become even more taboo than they were. It's weird because it's not as taboo to talk about it, but it's more uncomfortable to talk about it than it was in like the early 2000s. You know, it used to be don't talk about religion and politics. Now it's like talk about it all the time, but be really fucking uncomfortable about it the whole time.
Or talk about it in your echo chamber.
Yeah. Right.
You're not allowed to say anything outside of your echo chamber because then you're going to get attacked.
Right. And most people are so like deeply rooted into these different things, again, whether it's politics or religion or whatever, that you're not allowed to really question it. And most people get really touchy when they do. So to find someone like you who is willing to genuinely, peacefully explain to someone who disagrees with them their stance on something is something that most people don't actually get to experience very often. And I find that when I get the chance to do that, again, no matter what it's about, I love it. Like if I get a chance to really like talk to a Muslim about their religion and poke and prod and argue a little bit and like, well, that kind of sounds like the Jews and I think they're wrong too, you know, like, and, you know, just, but actually get a response and a little bit of a pushback. I love it. And so I think if we're able to do that and be the only party that's willing to do that, it'll invite people in a completely different way than what we're used to or what we're really tapping into yet.
I mean, yeah, 100%. And, you know, not to, hopefully I don't get yelled at in the comments here, but if we could just be a safe space for voters where they are allowed to have an opinion without getting chastised, told why they're wrong, shouted down, belittled, then we will attract more people and people will vote for us. They will be more than willing to listen to what we have to say if we're willing to listen to what they have to say. You know, if I'm not just going to wag my finger and tell you why you're wrong and just genuinely listen to you and go, well, you know, I disagree and this is what I believe, and not really even say that you're wrong or I'm right or any of that, just I believe this, you believe that. We can disagree. It's still a free country for now, right? Like, and then they walk off and it gives them the opportunity to think about that because everyone has gotten so used to being told, I'm right and you're wrong. Even if they're agreeing, and I've seen it happen, two people saying the same thing, arguing with each other, claiming that one's right and the other's wrong. That's how bad we've gotten, okay? But if you're able to literally just say, like, well, I disagree, I believe this, and that's okay that you believe what you believe,
yeah,
that leaves an impression on people these days because it's extremely rare.
Yeah, political discourse in this country is like a family dinner with my mom and my aunt. Like, it's just, well, I think that happened on Tuesday. Well, I think it happened 2 days before Thursday.
Well, that is Tuesday. Don't you talk back to me, right? Like, are you telling me I don't know what day it is? I don't have dementia, right? Like, I mean, you guys literally just said the same thing 2 different ways.
Yeah.
And think that you're arguing, and it's, I usually then just pour a bourbon and do one of these, like, oh.
Yeah, man. And it's the amount of times that I see that kind of stuff in my like Twitter replies, especially, you know, people, the worst is when it's my friends that are arguing who, you know, they're not friends, but they're both friends with me. And so like, oh, well, you're a Nazi. Oh, well, you're a communist. And it's like, no, actually, the person you're calling a communist is more right-wing economically than you are, and she's calling you a Nazi even though you call yourself woke. Like, but you don't know that about each other, so you're sitting here arguing because of other dumb shit.
It does get really, really weird, right? I think it came up in my Facebook memories, which are always fun to thumb through today, right? I got called a lefty for advocating for lower property tax.
How?
Because Republicans don't want lower property taxes in Indiana, so, and if I want lower property taxes, apparently that means I'm a lefty. It's just insane. Like, I don't like you, and so I'm going to call you names, and nothing gets done and nothing gets fixed. That's really the really saddest part of that whole thing. While it's amusing sometimes, and it's a sad state of society, the truth is, like, Social Security is going to run out of money in the next 10 years. And nobody wants to talk about it because that's a really, actual, genuinely hard conversation to have.
Yeah.
And God forbid we could talk to each other about it as civil human beings and try to find a solution.
Yeah. There's a lot of people, and this is a thing in every single party, and even people that think politics is stupid still participate in this. There are people who call people names that the other person doesn't agree with or does agree with and isn't offended by it until that person blocks them and they think that they have done something for their cause at all.
No, all you've done is alienate somebody and probably 10 of their friends.
Right.
You know, I used to be in the auto industry, so I was the guy who got to call you and tell you what was wrong with your car. So I was Mr. Popularity to be like, yeah, your stuff's broke. It's going to cost you $800. So I was extra likable, right? That was my job for a while, which does train you for politics, by the way. But if you treat a customer poorly, if a customer feels cheated, they're going to tell like 10 people how cheated they were, and those 10 people are going to tell 5 people. So for every one customer you piss off, you lose 50, right? Or whatever. There's math on it out there. Somebody does study one, right? There's real math. And then for every one customer you treat right, they're going to tell like 2 friends.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it takes like 3 or 4 really good encounters to make up for the one bad one.
Yeah.
And it applies to everything. It's not just, car repair, right? It's any kind of customer service, and politics is 100% a customer service business. Government serves taxpayers. That's its job, right? And politics is no different. We're out there to get votes, and we're the product, as I talked about earlier, right? So every person you upset, you're going to lose way more people than someone you made really, really happy.
Yeah.
And so, again, it comes back to make a good first impression, always be on brand. Whatever your brand is, make sure you're pushing that brand. Arguing with people is not going to advance your brand. Ask Bud Light.
Right. Oh. Yeah, those are some fun ones. I mean, I guess there is that, like, I mean, I guess that's the other U.S. Senate candidate from last cycle in New Hampshire kind of went that route with his campaigning. It's like, hey, let's see if we can piss off enough people into paying attention to us, with some success. But you have to lean, to your point, you have to always be on brand. And so you have to lean all the way into that. And I genuinely think where Jeremy Kauffman failed in his campaign was he didn't stay in character hard enough or long enough. Like, he wasn't enough of an asshole and enough like that, because he kind of like pulled back and did a couple of like really serious interviews and then like a couple of satirical ones, and there was a little bit of brokenness there. So I think you can do that, but that's a 1 out of 1,000 kind of a thing.
Right. And that's not building a long-term strategy either. That's going to be a flash in the pan.
Right.
For the most part. You make people really angry. It works for the old parties because they're super established and they have someone to blame. Right?
Yeah.
And they already have a base. That's why they talk about getting out their base.
Mm-hmm.
They already have a base that's going to get them elected. We need to build a base.
Yeah.
Right? In Indiana, we're super fortunate. We have about a 5 or 6% base in Indiana. We can run a guy and he does nothing and he'll get like 5% because we just have that many libertarians apparently in Indiana. And if you are one of them and you're not yet a member, go to ltin.org. Become a member. Because we don't have that. We don't have 5% of the state as members. So they're out there. We just have to find them. But we need to talk to these independent voters and these disenfranchised voters, especially the people who used to vote, realize nothing makes a difference no matter which way I vote, and they stopped voting. Those are people who are committed to going out and voting, and they know how to do it, and they've done it before, and they are just looking for a home, and they still somehow don't know we exist.
Yeah.
That is a true statement. There is a lot of people out there who still don't know the Libertarian Party exists.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they do a poll, voters go, yeah, we need a third party.
Yeah. There's like 14 of them that are active in at least a dozen states. Like,
right.
not
but
just
they don't know
us.
that we're here.
Yeah.
They don't know that we're here. And it's our job to go out and make that good first impression so that they can be like, you know what? These guys make sense, and I'm going to start voting again.
Yeah.
Those are our real demographic.
You make a really good like clarification with what you're talking about there that I've not heard anyone else talk about. And that's that the people that used to vote and now aren't. Because everyone talks about reaching the people that don't vote. No one talks about reaching the people who voted for 15 years and then gave up. Because that's a whole different demographic.
Those are our disenfranchised voters, and that's absolutely who we need to find, target, and talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have a message that they're going to like, even if they're not 100% libertarians, they are just so angry at the old parties that screw those people. Yeah, I'll give you my vote, right?
Yeah. Wait. So, Danny, are you saying that we should analyze voter data when building our campaign strategy?
If you're able to do that, you should totally do that.
It's a beautiful segue. 'Cause I know this is an extremely loaded question, but we can kind of take it wherever you want. How have you utilized data collection and voter data and things like that to make a campaign more efficient or effective?
Well, let's see. How much do I want to give away on a public podcast? Because there's some trade secrets in there. I'm fortunate again to be part of the Libertarian Party of Indiana. Libertarian Party of Indiana has invested in these things. We have a data team. I'm on that data team. That's probably why you asked me that question. And we are able to take the voter data, parse it down into the things we need, whatever that may be. And, the state party pays for eCanvasser, so we can load it up into a thing. We do eCanvasser training to teach you not only how to use the software, but how to knock on the door, how to talk to people, how to make the right good first impression, and then also how to record that data on the back end for use later. If I go knock on a door today in Mooresville and they're like, yeah, Danny Lundy's awesome, and I'm basically a libertarian, and, we need to be able to record that data so that the next time somebody in Mooresville runs for town council or runs for county council, when we go to that door, we know this is going to be a favorable door, and we remember to ask them, do you need a yard sign? Would you like to make a donation? Right? We need to know who these people are. There are a lot of people out there, like we just talked about, that we need to find. The only way you're going to find them is by talking to them, by literally going out and doing the Easter egg hunt in every neighborhood, knocking on doors and finding those Easter eggs out there, and then recording who and where they are.
Yeah.
Because if you don't record who and where they are, nobody knows they're there. They're still hidden. They're still a secret. You did not put that in your basket and take it home.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you just ate the candy and put it back.
You just put the wrapper back in the tree, and you didn't tell anybody you ate it. I mean, and that does nobody any good, right? So data analytics is huge. We in Indiana, we also have an agreement with a consumer data company. So we can also, and I was just doing this the other day for some of our candidates this year, pull consumer data for their districts and say, okay, this, I'm just going to use Mooresville as an example, and we compare the people in Mooresville to the standard person in the state of Indiana, and it says, how are they different? And it might say something like, and I had one, and I'm not going to tell you where it was because I don't want to give away his trade secrets, right? But I sent him this report, and I'm like, this is super interesting. Indiana is known as the basketball state, so I was kind of shocked that the average Hoosier, only 12% watch basketball. But in their town, 33% of people watch basketball. And this is 33% of voters. We've actually tracked it down so that it's only tracking voters. So that's a third of this guy's voters love basketball. I mean, maybe you put out a basketball themed sign, or right,
get a player's
maybe you go play some
endorsement.
hoops at the park. I don't know, but that's clearly something that you can connect with voters on, right? Hopefully that candidate is also a basketball fan. That would work out well for him. But just things like that. Let's put these things together, right? I'm able to go into that voter data and say, the consumer data. And one of the points is these people respond to mailers. So you say, I want to do a mailer. And I say, okay, instead of sending it to every voter in your district, which is a huge cost, and libertarians are limited on resources, let's work smarter, not harder. And let me pull a list of people that respond to mailers and look like a libertarian based on consumer data, because we've also built a libertarian profile in there. So anybody who kind of matches that profile and responds to mailers, here, send mail to those people, right? So we have limited resources, and we have to be way smarter than the old teams. The old teams don't even go knock on doors. They literally just rely on coattails to carry them through. But we also don't have millions of dollars, or even in a local race like this, I don't have tens of thousands of dollars on a county race to go spend and compete with these guys, right? So I have to be very smart in where I spend my volunteer hours, where I spend my donor money. And, that's also the libertarian way, by the way. We believe in efficiency. We believe in fiscal responsibility. We shouldn't be wasting anything. We should be running our campaigns as lean as possible, not without effect, as lean as we can with the maximum possible impact. And we do that by leveraging the tools at our disposal. I mean, it's 2023, folks. Databases exist. And these tools exist. And we can utilize them. And, you know, it's fortunate, like I said, that the LPIN people like Evan McMahon and Tim McGuire before him put an emphasis on this is one way we can outwork the other team, not necessarily, well, we can outwork them harder and we can outwork them smarter.
Yeah.
And if we work harder and smarter, we can win. Yeah. And that's just with less resources. You have to make that impact. I mean, so data is important to me. I'm a data analyst by trade during the day, so it's people give me a problem. Evan's like, here, go find these people. And I'm like, how do I find those people? And then the puzzle bothers me until I fix it. I'm really bad about taking advantage of that, too. He's like, hey, Danny, do you wonder can we find these voters? And I'm like, I don't know, can we?
That's also my dad's day job now. He went from computer programmer and ended up like programming databases and then into just managing them for the same company, and got replaced. Like somebody else took over all the programming, and now he's like so relieved. At first he was like, oh, I like, he was actually not super happy about it. If it didn't include a raise, he probably wouldn't have done it. But now he's like, this is so much fun.
Right? I don't actually have to talk to people all day. I just deal with numbers, and I get to solve weird problems all the time. It's back to that problem solver thing, right? But that is pretty much what I do all day. I stare at numbers. People are like, oh, give me a headache. I'm like, well, that's why they should pay me the big bucks. They don't, but they should.
Yeah, I think for me it was nuts going from a sales job where, you know, I bounced around a specific like sect of the financial sales industry for a while, and, you know, worked for some really small like kind of startup companies and some like really big well-funded companies. And, you know, like within sales in general, you know, if you don't have a CRM, you're not a real sales company. And so to go from that and being in that mindset and running my own sales company at the time, joining the Libertarian Party of New York and going to like a volunteer thing and being handed a printed out Google spreadsheet to make calls off of.
Yep. I remember those days.
I'm like, you're not a real company. You're not a real like. I was like, this isn't a real thing. You guys are a joke.
You're not wrong. And thank God the National Party finally bought a CRM.
Right.
Right. And we actually have access to this now because, like you said, when we started the Libertarian Party in Morgan County in 2016, and one of the first questions I had was, "Can I get a member list?" And they're like, "Maybe." And I'm like, "Wait, what? What?"
Yeah.
And then finally somebody looked it up and like scribbled it out on a piece of paper or emailed me a list, right? And I'm like, what is this? Right? And then I'd ask for one the next month, and they're like, ugh. Because apparently it was really hard to get. And I'm like, we got to fix that. Like, that's not, you know, before the CRM came along, Indiana had actually invested in some software ourselves to do member tracking and all those things, right? And then we eventually did switch over to the national CRM. And I've heard Indiana uses the CRM more than the other states combined, which is possible. We actually train all of our county chairs how to use it, and everybody's in there like all the time.
That's a nice claim to fame.
Utilizing this data, because I mean, why wouldn't you use a CRM to manage your members?
Right. That's the. So shortly after I joined the party here, we got ballot access and like official party status in the state of New York, thanks to Larry Sharp.
And they moved the goalposts on you, if I remember right.
Yes, they did. But since then, like, even though we're not an official party anymore, we still behave as such. We haven't like switched our bylaws back to the way that they were, and so it is illegal. Technically not anymore, but while we were a recognized party, it's illegal to charge dues and to charge like membership into a party. To become a member of the Libertarian Party of New York, technically all you have to do is become an enrolled libertarian.
Like a registered libertarian or whatever.
Yep. Okay. That's it. And so basically our entire member list is just the voter data. They just pull the elections department list every month or so, and that's our member list. But that's just like name, address, sometimes phone number.
Right.
And, you know, it gets pulled maybe once a month in some counties, and you kind of have to like ask the right person who knows how to get it pulled, because it costs. Like, some people don't have access to it. If a county chair tries to get it, it costs. But a couple people in the state party have like some way of getting it for free, and so you have to like ask the right person, and so on and so forth. It's BS, and it's a brand new spreadsheet every time. So it's not like we're working on it, editing it, filling it in. None of that. We're just starting from scratch every 2 months, and that is the best we have at a member CRM.
And that's insane.
Ridiculous.
For starters, but I'm going to be optimistic and look at the positive side here. You know, I was talking about Indiana has 5% of voters vote Libertarian every time.
Mm-hmm.
If Jeff Moore, is our Secretary of State's race, was our ballot access grant, if he had gotten 10%, Libertarians would have gone into the primaries, which in Indiana, it's super weird. We don't have voter registration. You don't go down and say, I'm a registered Republican or I'm a registered Libertarian. That's not a thing, right? What you have to do, the only way they know if you're a Republican or Democrat is you go vote in the primary.
Okay.
You go in the primary and say, I want to pull the Republican ballot. And so then I guess you're a Republican, ? Right? That's literally the only thing we have to go off of. So by keeping Libertarians out of the primaries, they prevent us from finding out who those voters are.
Right.
Now, in New York, you have, hey, I can check this box and say I'm a registered Libertarian. And they've never been a member. They've never donated. So this is a completely new contact. And that's awesome for you guys to have. But somebody should be dropping it into some kind of CRM or database so that you can parse and track data that way, right?
Yeah.
You need a good data analyst out there to be like, hey, this person used to be a member when we had our member list, right? And like combine those lists and put everything together. I mean, there's fun things you can do, but you got to find a data guy to do it, right?
Yeah.
And put it together for you.
We have like 2 decent data people in the party, but their entire workload is bogged down by just pulling these lists and getting them to people and breaking them down in some like whatever way the person asks it to. You know, it's very, very basic, and again, it's starting from scratch every time. We don't have a system for them to be working on, so all they're doing is this. You know, pushing the boulder up a hill,
right?
Yeah, and it's insane to watch.
I mean, it'd probably take a little fun work to get it going, but once you got it going, maintenance on that would probably be not too bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to see it, right? There's got to be an ID or something somewhere that you can. This person's the same thing. Did their data change? No. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like.
Yeah, I just built a fully functioning CRM for free in Airtable for one of my companies.
I mean, technically, Civi CRM is an open source thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the LP has customized it a lot for what we need.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, for something super basic, I mean, I don't know what the cap is on the free version because New York's probably an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
So you probably exceed that cap. But you're right. There's things out there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's basically just a glorified spreadsheet, but it works, and I can track my sales pipeline, and I can track my partners, and I can track a task manager, and I can track my employee information, and that's really all I need, you know? So I feel like it cannot be stressed enough how important it is to actually like utilize data for these kinds of things. But I think one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is they think, you know, if they're in a position like yourself, you know, I started a county chapter and now I'm running for a small office. Let's pretend you didn't get as involved in the state party as you have in that interim. You know, you would be waiting on the state party to actually do something and build a CRM and get you voter data and all this other stuff. You don't need that necessarily. You can have a county CRM or even a town CRM for like, if you can just do what you have to do, but keep it in a way that it's maintainable for the next person, that's still just better than nothing.
Yep. Right. That's 100% correct. Most counties, and I don't know what the laws are everywhere, right? But I know what it's like in Indiana. If I went to my county clerk and said, "Show me, I need a voter list for Mooresville because I'm running for town council," they would give it to me. It might take some time. It might cost me some money for them to pull that data for me. It might be a PDF. Okay, let's be honest. But you can go online and convert a PDF to a spreadsheet. That's a real thing that exists.
Yep.
There are tools available. It is the 21st century still, right? And you can, it might take a little time. Get one of your team members, get your campaign manager to find a data monkey, right? To go in and clean up that data and make sure everything's in the right rows and columns. Then you have a list. And then you can bust out like by street, there's text to columns. You can look, you can do Excel tricks and then go, okay, print off a list of this street. And then you hand them out to your volunteers and go, you do the street, you do the street, you do the street. And then make stars or L's or R's or whatever you're going to on that thing. Make sure it's consistent with all your volunteers. Don't have everybody jotting down smiley faces and hearts one way and the other guy's got some sort of number system. Make sure everybody's on the same page. And at the end of the day, after you door knock, you put all that back together, you give it to your data monkey, he puts it in the spreadsheet. This guy's, 1 to 5 stars, right? This guy was a 1 star. He really doesn't like libertarians. This person was a 5 star, the total libertarian, right? And then you track that data for the next person who runs next year. You still have that spreadsheet and you go pull that. Yeah, you're going to have to do some data scrubbing and say, these voters moved, they're not here anymore, right? But okay, you could still look up some of this stuff and be like, that guy was a 5 star last year. Make sure we talk to him, right? I mean, there are ways to do these things. We're fortunate, like I said, the LPIN is awesome about helping provide these things for our candidates so that they don't have to think about it, and that's awesome. That's one of the reasons why our candidates can focus on actually just running their race and we get elected libertarians and things are going well here. And I would encourage county and state affiliates to look into these things. Your job is to build this infrastructure and support to make the candidate's job so that all they have to do is talk to people and ask for money. And their campaign manager just has to call you and say, I need this. And you're like, cool, we have that.
Yeah.
Then the campaign manager can worry about the fires and not reinventing a wheel somewhere.
Yep.
Right? The easier we make it for our teams, the better they're going to do.
Yeah. And, a lot of this is the long game. Maybe you don't have that, consumer data connection and have a list of people who already seem like a libertarian. But if you're a libertarian, I feel like it's kind of like being gay. You kind of have like a liberty dart. You can tell when somebody else is one pretty easily. It doesn't take that much. If you're running for a town position, it does not take that long to knock every door.
Depends on the size of your town.
Right.
Yes, for the most part.
Right. I mean, maybe not the candidate by themselves, of course, but like a team of a dozen people can knock out a county at least within 2 to 3 cycles easily.
Right.
And have every single person listed, like have those stars and go from there. You don't have to have a whole bunch of data on someone, but you can go and have one conversation with every single person in your county. And then when you're running your next congressional race, or Senate race 4 years from now, you have all of this data to work with, all of these people. You have these people's kids' names. This person was struggling with cancer but recovered. Go check on them.
All of those things.
All of that.
Things are useful information. And I'll do you one better. Here's a free option you can use. MailChimp is free up to a certain number of people. And when you go out and you do your tabling event, the one thing we love to do here is the world's smallest political quiz.
Yep.
We buy the politically homeless kit, comes with a giant poster with the diamond on it, right? And we just ask people, hey, you want to take the quiz? It's fun. It's just for fun. And they answer the little 10 questions. We put a dot on there. It gives us a minute to say, like, yep, we're libertarians. This is where we are. This is where you landed. This is what other people believe. And it's just fun to see where everyone in this community lands, right? Come back and see us at the end of the festival and see where all the dots are. My favorite ending line is, if you watch any kind of news on any channel, they want you to believe you're way left or way right. And the truth is, the dots are all kind of grouped right here in the middle. We're not as different as they want us to believe. And people like hearing that message. But here's the thing. If you're giving away a $50 gift card if they sign up for your newsletter and they fill out the back of the card with their name, address, phone number, you have their name, address, phone number, email, right? Because they're going to sign up for your newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
And you know where they landed on the world's smallest political quiz and know what they care about. And you can put custom fields into MailChimp. So we put their political quiz scores in MailChimp. So if I say I want somebody who was 90 or above on social issues because we have a big social issue going on in our county right now when I send out this newsletter, I can target those people. And if I want only the people who scored Libertarian because I'm going to send out a membership drive, then I will send it to those people.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a database I can download and print out that has name, address, phone number, email address, notes about our conversation, where they scored on the political quiz. You can use MailChimp for free. Up to, I think it's like 5,000 or 10,000 contacts. It's a lot. 2,500 maybe. I don't know. Think about that. So these are people who visited your booth. You had a conversation with them. You made a good first impression. You now have data on them. Mm-hmm. You put it in MailChimp, which is a database. You have a way to contact them, which is through MailChimp, right? If you're doing a walk list, you can totally print it out from there. And you can build that list there. You totally can. And if you exceed whatever the free amount is, it's $10 a month to get more, right? To pay for the paid version. It's not that hard. If you have nothing else to go on in your county, do that.
Yeah. I feel like if you have that many email addresses, you should be able to send out a well-written fundraising email and raise that $10 a month.
We do a quarterly newsletter, and here's the formula we use, and I'm happy to give this away to every county affiliate out there. Please pay attention. First story at the top of the newsletter is a relevant local story. Hey, our county council is building a $72 million justice center, and we're kind of a rural county, so that's a lot. And that is a real story happening in Morgan County right now. Your property taxes are going up because of it, and people are really complaining right now because those checks are coming out, right? The second thing is county affiliate news. Hey, we did an awesome thing. We have a candidate running, whatever. We held our county convention, whatever you're doing. We did we're big on active service in Indiana. So like we have a Mooresville cleanup day coming where we're literally just going to go out, put on libertarian shirts and go pick up garbage for a day, and make our community better, right? So we might put like, hey, we had fun at the Mooresville, cleanup day thanks to these, the nonprofits who put it on, which is the Mooresville Chamber of Commerce and City Changers. So thanks to them. And then the bottom will be some sort of call to action. Email your county councilman about the $72 million Justice Center, tell them you don't want your taxes raised, or become a member, right? Something along the donate to Danny's campaign, whatever. So it's just bing, bang, boom, 1, 2, 3. We don't spam people. We don't send out something every week. We do it about every other month. So it's not enough that they want to cancel. And they're like, oh, I didn't know about this thing going on in my county. That's interesting, right? And it probably links to a longer story on our website, by the way, which drives traffic to your website if you have one. So if you have no other resources, MailChimp's a great way to get started and start communicating with people.
Yep. And if your website's built correctly, as soon as they click on that link, they'll probably get a pop-up for a donation. Or at least it'll be like a big,
it's a big yellow
right
button.
There.
It's a big yellow button with the Liberty Phoenix on it, and it's on every page.
There you go. Yeah, if you're doing it right, I feel like a lot of people think that these $10 to $20 a month subscriptions to the couple of things are really big hurdles, but like you mentioned with MailChimp and quite a few other similar things, there's almost always a free option, and if you are doing it right, you'll be making that money back before you have to spend it, if you're utilizing your list correctly at all.
And as you get a little bit of money, you can add features, right? Hey, we've got a nice website now. Hey, we've got a monthly donation option on our website.
Yep.
Things like that, which, by the way, could pay for MailChimp or something like that. You know, you got somebody who's donating $20 a month. That's guaranteed income for a little while, right? As long as that person sticks around, and you get 2 or 3 of those, next thing you know, you're making $60 a month.
Yeah.
And now you have some money to go do a newer event in a different part of the county to get more contacts, right? I mean, it's got to start somewhere. Don't feel discouraged. I mean, in Indiana, and I love to say this because it's one of my favorite things, Morgan County is 2-time County Affiliate of the Year. But we, even as Evan likes to say, though, Morgan County wasn't even Morgan County when they started. We were just 3 people in the coffee shop having a meeting once a month, right? And it was, let's do an event, okay? And we all chipped in a few bucks, and we went out and did an event. We met some people. We did the quiz, right? We started like, hey, what can we do about a newsletter? Okay, and we just started to build from there. And that first year we did 1 event. The next year we were able to do 2 events, right? Then we did 2 events for a year or 2, and then we did a 3rd one because we started to raise a little more money, started to get some more volunteers because volunteers are also important. You know, you can't do it all by yourself. If you're the chair and you're like, I'm going to do 7 events this year, and they're all 4 days long, and you're the only guy showing up, well, that is not gonna work out. Like, you can only ice your knees so much. Like, you need help, and you need people to come work these shifts with you or for you, so that you can take a break, right? So, and you need to make sure you have other people there besides the candidate. Right? You're running the booth. You're running the quiz. You know, mom's bringing drinks in for everybody. And the candidate has to sit there and be the candidate the whole time. Right? You got to talk to people about things that matter in Mooresville while your partner's over here giving folks the quiz and talking to them about, like, this is what a libertarian is. Hey, you scored libertarian. Have you met Danny? Right? He's a libertarian running right here in Mooresville, right? Things like that. We do a lot of that with our candidates down here in Morgan County. It's like, hey, after you took the quiz, have you met James? We did a whole lot of, have you met James?
I like it. I like it a lot. I want to switch back a little bit to that, candidate campaign manager dynamic, because you mentioned it a little bit early on, and I've heard that a good campaign manager interviews the candidate, not vice versa. Would you agree with that? Have you experienced the same thing?
Oh, I don't know. Again, I said no like 10 times before I ever signed on. So, listen, I will say this. I think when you agree to sign on, and you know, one of the things I think I saw in the lead up to the show, you should be planning 2 years before your election day. Like, if you're like, my election's November this year, I started my campaign committee January of 2022, right? So I had all of 2022 and now all of 2023, or most of 2023, right?
Yeah.
And that's for a local race. If you're running James's campaign, you know, or a Senate race or something like that, you may want to plan even further out. And it's not all about like, hey, you have your logo and everything. It's that those things take time, right? So 2 years before you're running, you're looking for your campaign manager, right? And you're looking to build that team so that you can start sitting down and doing the logo and finding out what you're going to talk about and getting your campaign committee together, getting Facebook approved, because that takes months, right, to be approved to run ads. That's a whole process.
Yeah.
And these things have to be done on the front end before you can do anything.
Yeah.
And you should be getting that out of the way before the actual real public campaign starts, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little like being married. Once you sign on as campaign manager and candidate, y'all are married until election day. And that is the good, bad, ugly parts of marriage, right? Like, you're going to share all the successes, you're going to share all the defeats, you're going to fight, and that's okay. Evan actually told me that every good campaign gets to a point where everybody wants to punch each other's lights out. And if you're there, then that means you're probably doing a good job. And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. But I mean, it's true though. It is like a marriage, and it involves the same amount of trust. You know, the candidate's going to have to trust the campaign manager, even when he thinks he's wrong. Because the truth is, the campaign manager is in the background doing the research, digging all this stuff up while the candidate's being the candidate. And so sometimes it's hard to convey, hey, let me data dump you the 10 hours of research I did on this so that you understand where I'm coming from, right?
Yep.
So there has to be huge level of trust, a really good level of communication too. You have to be on the same page. You can't be fighting when you agree. You don't have time for that. You have to be able to find a way to communicate together. So I think they're interviewing each other. Is this going to be a good match?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know, and then the candidate gets down on one knee and hands them, you know, a bank card and says, "Will you be my campaign manager?"
Yeah.
And, you know, but it does have to be mutual, and it is at times a love-hate relationship. You know, people get mad, and you get it's a lot of work. Candidates get super frustrated, and you know, just like being married. You know, some days the candidate's gonna come home and just be like, tough day at the office, you know, and you just gotta kind of like rub their shoulders and give them a bourbon and say it's gonna be all right, man.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and then other days it's like you're jumping up and down, like, yeah, right, because everything went well that day.
Yeah.
And it just is what it is, and you're gonna. It is a lot like being married.
Yeah.
Honestly, and so I think you have to interview each other, and if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And it, especially on the bigger campaigns where you're going to be under pressure and have things going on every single day. I mean, that was the thing when we were doing James's campaign. I probably talked to James through.
Oh, come on. Let's not do this. Testing, testing. Oh. Well, I'm trying to figure this out. We'll talk about what's going on next week, or not next week. No show next week. I'll be traveling and on vacation. But the next 2 weeks after that, we have a Forest Mommy coming on, which I am super, super excited about. I've been following her on Twitter for quite some time. And then after that, Jonathan Casey, one of the founders and the chair of the Classical Liberal Caucus, is going to be on the show. Let me see if I can get him back. Maybe, hopefully. Well, it's not a real Fight for Liberty stream if I don't lose the guest at least once, right? It just wouldn't feel like home. It wouldn't feel right. And should be almost there. Maybe. Alright guys, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's going on here.